We've already heard from several speakers this morning that dog population management isn't one thing. It's many things working together. So it's laws and policies to keep people and animals safe. It's regulation and compliance and enforcement to make sure those laws actually work. So we've got laws on paper, but we need to make sure they work in practice. It's also government institutions who often have the mandate, the resources, and the authority to lead. So in many cities, it's the city government that sets the direction for everything else. It's funding flows to sustain the work, so we need sustainable funding. As Karen pointed out this morning, dog population management isn't a job that eventually ends. It's a system we have to constantly invest in. It's NGOs and charities who often deliver the dog population management on the ground. It's veterinary services to provide clinical capacity. It's communities and dog owners whose behaviour shapes everything. And linked to that, it's public attitudes to either support or undermine the work. And then finally, it's data monitoring, learning, and evaluation to tell us what's working and what isn't. And you'll hear more about that from Ellie, my colleague, later on today. So each of those, if you think about it, is like a gear in a machine. And the machine only works when the gears turn together. Now, what I'd like to do is take a step back. So this is dog population management as a system, but I'd like us to think a little bit about what a system actually means. So what is a system? What do we mean when we talk about a system? Can we think of some principles that underpin a system? So firstly, I would say that a system is a set of parts that only produce the outcome together. So you can't get the ideal result from just one of these gears on their own. You need all of them. And systems are sensitive. So if you change one part, then you affect the others. If you pull one gear out of alignment, then the whole machine starts to strain. That sensitivity makes systems fragile as well. So if we change one part alone without thinking about the rest, then problems can follow. The solution in one place can create a new problem somewhere else within the system. But when parts move together, the system shifts. When gears turn in the same direction, that's when real change can happen, and that's why systems, when built properly, are really, really effective. Now, I should say that I've been talking about dog population management as a system, and that's a really useful way for us to think about it, but strictly speaking, I would say that dog population management is a set of systems nestled within a larger one. So regulation and enforcement is a system to itself. Veterinary care is a system. Community education is also a system. And each has its own moving parts. Maybe a useful way to think about this is if you think of a car engine. Now there's a cooling system, an exhaust system, an electric system, and they all operate on their own logic, but they're all connected. And a well-designed car can handle a bit of wear and tear. A small fault doesn't necessarily stop the car, but it might trigger a warning light on the dashboard. And that light really matters. It doesn't mean the car's finished, it means pay attention. Something needs looked at. And I would say that every system has its equivalent of that light on the dashboard. So the question is whether you're watching for it or whether you're ignoring it until the car breaks down. So it's really important to work out within your system, within your dog population management system, what are your warning lights that you're looking for that would tell you that that system is under strain. And there's one more thing about systems that I think is important and I want to share. You don't need to be an expert in the whole system. You need to be an expert on your part. So you need to know which gears interlocked with yours. So know what affects you and what you affect. That's where your focus belongs. And you won't always agree with people running the other gears. And that's fine. Disagreement isn't the problem within systems. The problem is when disagreement stops people from working together. Now, of course, there are some fundamentals that we all have to share. So humane treatment, evidence-based decision-making, and a commitment to what actually works. But beyond that, we have to learn to disagree well, to stay at the table, and to keep the system moving. So where do we start? Well, I think that we start by mapping your own systems. Now, we don't have time today to do a full mapping exercise, but we can begin by thinking about it. And I think that the best way to do that is with the person sitting next to you. So in a minute, I am going to ask you to have a short conversation with the people sitting next to you. And I want you to think about dog population management in your own city or town, and between you to consider 6 things. So gaps, what's missing from your system, what should be there and isn't. Overlaps, so where are 2 parts of the system doing the same thing without knowing it? Blockers, so what's stopping the system in your town or city from working? Where does it keep getting stuck? Where are those little problem areas? Anchors, so what's holding the system in place? What are your strengths within your system right now? What are the things you can rely on? Connections, so what parts of your system are connected well, and which parts feel a bit isolated, so they might be developed, but they're not necessarily connected yet from other parts. And finally, pressure points, so that's the warning lights. Where is the strain within your system? Where is it showing? And where does the system feel close to breaking? So that's quite a lot, and I don't want you to necessarily discuss all of those, or feel free to if you have the time. You can pick 1 or 2. So you might want to discuss, for example, gaps in veterinary capacity within your context, or you might want to discuss the real strengths and connections you've got within legislation in your country. But I want you to pick a couple and just speak to the person sitting next to you. Now, I'm going to bring up a clock in a minute that will say we have 5 minutes, but actually I'm going to give you 3, and the last 2 minutes we'll do a little bit of reporting back. So take 3 minutes to just have a conversation with the person sitting next to you, think about those themes, and have a think about those in your own context. So where are your gaps, where are your strengths? So please just take a few minutes to think about that. Thank you, everyone. I hope you all had a good chat there. Now, I know that wasn't very long, And you can continue this conversation later today. Yep. So, yes. So I know we've all been in listening mode.
Can we please have your attention? Because this was a very, very interesting exercise, and I hope you did it. I did, even though I'm just a moderator.
So we've all been in listening mode. So I'm going to ease us in gently. What I'd like you to do is put your hand up if any of those 6 things, so the gaps, blocks, overlaps, pressure points, put your hand up if you feel that those are familiar in your context, so if some of those themes made sense to you in your own context. So I see quite a lot of hand goes up and quite a lot of nodding heads, so that's great. And then I wondered, I'm going to give you 5 seconds to think just of one word that would summon up the system back home. So that could be sustainable, it could be strained, it could be hopeful, it could be collaborative, it could be evolving. But does anyone want to share a word that you think summons up where you're at right now in your own system? Anyone? Complicated. That's a great word, yeah. And I think we can all relate with that. These systems are complicated. Yes?
Yeah, I'm going to say incomplete.
Incomplete,
Yeah.
Another great word. Any other examples? Oh, yeah, we've got one up there. Disconnected, so complicated, disconnected, incomplete. So I think we're all struggling, we see, with some of the same problems here, and it's great to have these conversations and make these connections, and when we realize we're sharing problems, we can swap solutions as well, and I hope we'll get the chance to do that later on. So we've been talking about systems in the abstract, and what I'd like to do now is think about what this means for a real city.
Može malo samo tiše, ne čujemo.
So to show us, I'd like to hand over to my colleague, Catherine Thomson, ICAM's Head of Communications and Engagement, and Catherine's going to bring this to life with some real-world examples of systems in practice. So please put your hands together for Catherine Thomson.
Good afternoon, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here with you. And before I start, I'd just like to take a moment to echo Patrick's comment and congratulate Anita and the team on what has been a fantastic conference so far. And I'd also like to take a moment to acknowledge the technical and translation teams who are doing a superb job. So thank you very much to you all. So back to our session. Around the world, as we all know, NGOs are strengthening dog population management systems in different ways. Thinking about what Patrick's just been saying, depending on whether the challenge is weak connections, missing capacity, overlaps, blockers, or something else. And to illustrate this, I'd like to briefly highlight 3 examples of where we think NGOs are adapting their approach and applying their expertise in different local contexts. Now, these organizations that I'm about to show you are not all doing the same thing, and that's the point. Truly effective NGOs adapt their role to what a particular system needs most. So, let's take a look at 3 examples. First of all, we're going to Bulgaria. Now, in Bulgaria, the challenge was not just the presence of stray dogs, but fragmented municipal resources and weak coordination between actors. Between 1999 and 2006, more than 70,000 stray dogs were killed in Sofia. Dogs were caught, kept for 14 days, and then killed, but without a clear reduction of the stray dog numbers in the streets. There was no dog population management program in place and no veterinary staff prepared to work with stray animals. In 2008, the first Bulgarian Animal Protection Act came into force. It prohibited culling as a control method for the stray dog population, but there was very little municipal capacity to carry out stray animal neutering projects, and little enforcement preventing pet abandonment. So Four Paws, which was founded in Vienna in 1988, responded by partnering directly with Sofia Municipality and municipal services to help deliver a more integrated, humane dog population management approach. And the lesson from this example is that NGOs can strengthen systems, not just through direct delivery, but by improving coordination and supporting public sector implementation. A familiar example next. Here in Bosnia and Herzegovina, the challenge was different, as we know, as we've been rightly hearing about. Humane legislation was already in place, but there was insufficient veterinary capacity to implement it effectively at scale. And as we've been hearing already today, Dogs Trust responded by establishing a veterinary training program, working with the University of Sarajevo from day one to build skilled veterinary teams across the country. So rather than delivering everything themselves, they focused on building the professional infrastructure needed for long-term, sustainable implementation. And the lesson from this example is that NGOs can strengthen systems by developing local expertise and enabling others to deliver it. Finally, we're heading to South Africa, where the key challenge in this example was not primarily technical or structural, but behavioral. Poor, responsible ownership and harmful community attitudes towards dogs. Funda Nenja, whose name roughly translates from isiZulu as learning with a dog, responded by focusing on education, working with children and communities to promote responsible ownership alongside veterinary and welfare support, with a particular focus on young people as future agents of change within their communities. Now, this example makes clear that without addressing human behaviour, as we've already talked about today, technical interventions alone are highly unlikely to succeed. So the lesson here is that NGOs can strengthen systems by addressing the behaviours at the root of dog population issues in a given context. So, my final slide. Looking across these examples, what effective NGOs have in common is not that they all do the same thing. It's that they operate strategically and cooperatively. They assess system needs. They identify where they can add value. They adapt their role to the context. And they work with others rather than in isolation. So what makes an NGO truly effective is not simply its technical strengths or the scale of what it does, but how well it understands the system it is working within before taking action. Ultimately, no one group can deliver humane, effective dog population management alone, but together we can build systems that are humane, effective, and sustainable. And with that, I'll hand back to Patrick for our closing reflections. Thank you.
Thank you, Catherine, and thank you for sharing those three excellent examples of a system operating in success as well. So what I'd like to do is take you back to where we started, so to take you back to Barkview. And the journalist is still outside the town hall, the microphone is still on, and the question is still the same: who is responsible? And the mayor's pointing at the shelter, and the shelter's pointing at the vet, and the vet's pointing at the police, and the police are pointing at the dog owners, and the dog owners pointing to environmental health, and environmental health is pointing back at the mayor. But we now know what they don't. The responsibility on dog population management doesn't sit with one person or organisation or department. It's diffused across the system. And that's not a flaw, it's a strength, it's the point. Because when everybody owns a part of it, and everybody understands how they're connected to the rest, the system works. So the answer to who is responsible is simple. We all are. And that brings me to something that I want to leave you with today. If you're here from a municipality that's committed to humane dog or cat population management and you want a practical framework for building healthier systems, I want to tell you about Positive Cities. So Positive Cities is an ICANN network of cities doing exactly that. It's cities that are assessed against a clear framework for humane management. They get a score and they work towards improving it. And as they improve, they earn international recognition. But here's why it makes it relevant to everything we're discussing today. Membership of Positive Cities also requires cities to work in partnership with local NGOs. It's built into the model. So for the NGOs in this room, if your city joins Positive Cities, you're no longer on the outside knocking the door. You're a partner the city needs, and you've worked together towards shared goals with a shared framework. Cities as diverse as Bangkok, Cape Town, Bucharest, Bogota, and Toronto are already part of the network. So if that sounds like something that for your city, there's a QR code on the screen. Feel free to scan it or come and talk to me or Catherine afterwards. We'd be very happy to talk you through it. Thank you very much, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the conference.
Thank you so much. This was just brilliant, time-wise and information, and very useful. Does anyone have any question that would ask Catherine and Patrick? Especially the NGOs, I see them, or municipalities. This was all very, very informative, but is there any question? We have a question, okay?
I was only going to ask about the Positive Cities. Is there a size limit to a city?
To the cities, we'd be really keen to hear from anyone in the room that's interested. Let's have a chat after this and we'll talk about membership, but please, really keen to have representation from cities of all sizes.
Ima dole.
Dobar dan. Ja imam onako malo veće pitanje, ali u principu me interesuje koja je najčešću grešku prave lokalna udruženja kada pokušavaju doći do međunarodnog...
Samo malo. Možete li samo sačekati da im damo headset jer nemaju? And then this is one. Thank you. Sorry. Okay.
Koju najčešću grešku prave lokalna udruženja kada pokušavaju doći do međunarodne
do međunarodne podrške, jel?
Da.
So what's the main mistake that local
NGOs
authorities
make when they're trying to get the international funding?
International funding? I don't know if I'm well placed to answer that question, to be honest, if it's about funding streams. What I will say is I think when you do that exercise of mapping out your system, understanding your own strengths and weaknesses is a really important step before you go out for funding. You know, I think any funding partner will want to know that you understand the system in your own context, because that would mean that you understand where the funding should go, where your weaknesses are, where you need to build those strengths within a system. I think having good partnerships is also really important to draw in funding. So what we want to see is NGOs working with local authorities, working with other organisations within their context. So there's no one answer for that. It depends on each individual context and city, but partnership certainly, and doing that mapping exercise, understanding your strengths and weaknesses. If you do those, you will be in a better place to have conversations with international funders.
Mogu li ja još dodati?
Okay. Imamo još jedno.
Evo ovako, pitam vas zbog toga što ja dolazim iz... Pitam vas zbog toga što ja dolazim... Ja dolazim iz najveće općine u Bosni i Hercegovini, iz Konjica, i imamo udruženje koje je staro 3 godine. No međutim, prije 2 godine smo na svoju inicijativu počeli sklanjati pse sa ulica i sa područja općine na jedno zemljište gdje negdje imamo oko 5000 kvadrata. No međutim, nama izostaje totalna podrška, znači mi sami se brinemo o svojim psima, znači općina apsolutno nema nikakvog sluha za nas, niti želi apsolutno da zna. Ja sam bezbroj puta išla i dopise i na kraju sam bila toliko očajna da sam uzela sve međunarodne organizacije i svima sam slala mail gdje su samo par organizacija odgovorile da oni nisu za što ja tražim, a u principu mi samo tražimo neko partnerstvo jer ne znamo koliko mi sami možemo još dugo da hranimo i pazimo i održavamo veterinarsku njegu na 200 pasa. Hvala.
You did understand, okay?
Well, I would say that in the first instance, try and build a partnership with your local authority. Understand what you want to achieve, so what's your objective? Understand who can give you that, so whether that's a local mayor or someone else within the municipality. And then you want to think about your message and who your messenger is as well, and start having those conversations. But be really clear about your objectives. Think about mutual benefit as well. So if you're going to develop a partnership, whether that is with an international NGO or your local municipality, you want to define the mutual benefit and show it how it works for them as well. So I think that's a good place to start.
Evo imamo još jedno pitanje i onda će to biti za ovaj put zadnje u interesu praćenja ovog našeg itinerara.
Bude trebalo, pomagat ćete. Ja sam Alma Kovačević i rukovodim nevladnom organizacijom Udruženja za etički tretman čovjeka i životinja koji se zove Mi smo dio rješenja. Već dugi niz godina postojimo i radimo volonterski. Naš je primarni fokus prevencija i dokumentovanje nasilja nad životinjama i saradnja sa institucijama u cilju doprinosa trajnom rješenju populacije i pasa i trajnom rješenju patnje životinja. Voljela bih da čujem vaš savjet ili vašu observaciju u vezi sa jednim problemom s kojim se sreću većina nevladnih organizacija, udruženja u našoj zemlji. Nadam se da u prvom dijelu predavanja nisam propustila vaš odgovor jer sam išla davati antibiotike mačku kojeg je jučer operisala ova predivna doktorica koja sjedi ovdje. Nažalost, naša zemlja pripada zemljama u kojima nema provedbe zakona.
Ja se izvinjavam, naprijed, možemo samo pitanje
može,
konkretno.
Institucije su vrlo nefunkcionalne i nisu fokusirane ka provedbi zakona. Udruženja žele da pomognu da se što više problema počne rješavati zakonito i sistemski. Nailazimo na zid kod institucija koje su više fokusirane na kažnjavanje i na brzo rješenje, konkretno kad je sa psima riječ, znači to su šintori, hvatanje pasa na nelegalne načine i ubijanje, što je nezakonito. Nemaju sluha da rade na preventivnim mjerama.
Ja se izvinjam, ali koji savjet? Samo nam treba, jer smo kratki s vremenom. Koji savjet?
Imate li ikakav savjet kako da udruženja pristupe tom problemu, odnosno ponudi rješenja kada imamo nerazumijevanje od institucija? Hvala.
To je konkretno.
So that's a big and complex problem, and the first place to start, I imagine, would be dialogue. So to get round the table with those institutions. You would have heard that one of the points we spoke about in the presentation was that sometimes there is disagreement within systems, but what you absolutely don't want is, because there's a disagreement, for the whole system to break down. you need to continue with that dialogue. Make sure that you have a point of contact within the local authority. It sounds like from what I heard, if we were looking at that system, we were doing that mapping exercise within your context, that one of those gaps, those weaknesses was around regulation and enforcement. So you've got the law, but it's not necessarily being enforced. And you would need those government institutions to step up and think about that. And you might want to partner with them and think about what good regulation looks like and how that's enforced on the ground, whether NGOs can play a role in that, as is the case in some countries. It will be the SPCA that will do some of that enforcement. But I think that dialogue and building up those relationships, and that's a long journey, but you have to start somewhere. So start by getting around the table and having dialogue. So thank you for that question, and happy to chat with you at the break as well to go into more detail. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Hvala velika. Jedan veliki pozdrav.